Revealed. How a black maid's amazing lessons transformed a billionaire's son in just 1 month. Marcus Hawthorne lounged by the edge of his infinity pool, staring blankly at the shimmering water that reflected the sun's harsh light. The expansive Silicon Valley estate swirled beauty and wealth around him, yet he felt a chasm of disconnection. Each luxurious detail, the glistening luxury cars lined up like trophies, the marble floors that stretched endlessly, felt like it was built to entrap him rather than liberate him. At 23, he was the heir to a tech fortune, but no wealth brought him the joy his father claimed was the essence of success. Instead, he felt like a shadow, forever confined within his father's gilded cage. His heart weighed heavy with the expectations thrust upon him, a constant pressure that felt suffocating. His father's voice echoed through the mansion, barking out numbers during conference calls, each figure pulsating with the relentless drive for profits. "Marcus, when are you going to step up? Success requires unyielding ambition." Those hollow words echoed in Marcus's mind as he replayed the same scene over and over, desperately seeking validation. The truth was that no amount of success had filled the void within him, creating a gnawing uncertainty about his own identity. What if he wasn't cut out for this life? What if, more importantly, he didn't want it at all? As he stared lazily at the water, a cheerful laugh drew his attention. Clara, the maid, was moving around the pool area, her arms filled with fresh towels. She exuded a joy and warmth that felt out of place in the cold, marble-drenched mansion. He had often watched her, admiring her resilience, her ability to find light in the everyday struggles life had thrown her way. Her laughter had an infectious quality. If only his life had a fraction of that lightness. "Life's about connection, not just numbers," Clara had said to him once, her eyes sparkling with wisdom. Nearby, he found himself captivated by the way she interacted with the world, a stark contrast to the lifeless connections in his father's business world. "You can do more than just inherit, Marcus. Work for your dreams." He thought about this, the possibility swirling in his head like the autumn leaves outside. Could he dare to step beyond his secured walls? Before he could fully digest this revelation, a familiar pressure settled over him. The looming business merger his father had banked on. The stakes had never been higher. Marcus felt the pull of the family legacy, the deep-rooted belief that he had to conform to succeed. But just as he prepared to bow to the unflinching demands his father had laid before him, a rumor of scandal erupted, shaking the very foundations of his family's empire. Corporate corruption allegations threatened to unravel everything, and the chaos set his mind racing. Was this what he wanted? To be tangled up in a web of deceit? To maintain a facade of loyalty that felt increasingly disingenuous? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the midst of this turmoil, Clara's voice echoed in Marcus's mind, a lifeline in the raging storm. "Integrity matters," she had said, her tone firm yet kind. The crossroads appeared before him, the weight of his family's legacy pressing down on his chest like a vice. Would he betray his own sense of self, continuing his father's ruthless game, or would he seize the moments Clara had inspired him to chase? True connection, resilient ambition, a future forged from passion instead of obligation? As he stood there, anxiety clawing at his insides, Marcus sensed an intense battle raging within. Would he remain in the confines of his upbringing, or would he rise, brave enough to venture into the unknown? The moment hung heavy in the air, as every decision crackled with potential, leaving the fate of his family and his own identity hanging in the balance. Marcus's mind raced as he grappled with the weight of his choices. He forced himself to squint against the glaring sun reflecting off the pool, imagining each ripple as a life path unfurling before him. The thought of continuing down his father's prescribed route filled him with dread, as if he were staring into an abyss of corporate greed. Clara's voice replayed in his head like an echo, urging him to seek authenticity over expectation. He rose abruptly from his sun-soaked perch and strode through the mansion's opulent halls, the whispers of wealth swirling in his wake. As he walked through the expansive living room, adorned with art pieces that meant more as status symbols than for their own merit, he felt a pang of repulsion. This was not who he wanted to be. He caught a glimpse of his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Disheveled hair, a carefully maintained facade of luxury, and deep-set eyes that had lost their spark. What had he become? Reaching Clara's small break room, tucked away from the grandeur of the estate, he hesitated. The aroma of fresh coffee mixed with the scent of lemon cleaner filled the air, creating an oddly comforting atmosphere. It was a place vibrant with human connection, a stark contrast to the coldness of his father's world. "Hi, Marcus," Clara greeted him, her smile radiating warmth as if she hadn't just completed a grueling morning shift. "What's got you looking so serious?" He opened his mouth to answer but hesitated. What could he say? "I'm struggling with what it means to succeed," seemed trivial in the face of the corporate chaos threatening his family's empire. Instead, he asked, "Clara, how do you find joy in your work?" Her brow furrowed, then her expression softened. "Joy isn't about the work itself, but how you approach it. I take pride in what I do, and I connect with the people I meet, even for a moment. It's this human touch that makes each day worthwhile." Marcus leaned against the counter, contemplating her words as they settled like heavy stones in his chest. He thought about all the moments he had missed, conversations with his father that felt more businesslike than familial, meetings filled with superficial pleasantries, friendships forged in mutual benefit rather than genuine understanding. Clara's perspective marked a stark rejection of everything he had known. "What if," he ventured, "what if I wanted to chase connection over profits? What if I wanted to change the narrative?" Clara studied him thoughtfully, her eyes narrowing with a mix of concern and hope. "Then you might have to face some uncomfortable truths. Changing the narrative doesn't come easy, especially in your world. People will resist." The knot in Marcus's stomach twisted tighter at her words, yet a flicker of determination ignited within him. For the first time, he felt more than mere fear regarding his family's legacy. He felt a burgeoning desire for action. Seeking a sense of purpose meant he would have to confront not just the external pressures, but also the internal battles raging in his mind. "I want to explore more than just being the next Hawthorne," he confessed, the weight of his admission both liberating and terrifying. "I want to redefine what success means to me." As her stare met his, Clara nodded, her expression mirroring a fierce resolve. "Then it's time to break the cycle. But be prepared. This journey won't be without opposition. Are you ready for that?" The challenge settled over him like a mantle, heavy yet invigorating. He straightened, a rebellious fire flickering in his spirit. "I am ready." With newfound clarity pulsating through his veins, Marcus felt an urgent sense of purpose take shape. Clara's lessons had shattered the glass walls surrounding him, revealing a path forward tainted with uncertainty, yet glimmering with hope. He understood now that it wouldn't be easy. The looming fallout from his family's corruption scandal would test his resolve in ways he could not yet imagine. As he stepped out of the break room, he locked eyes with Clara once more, silently vowing to navigate this journey with integrity at its core. The stakes were about to rise. It was time to craft his own narrative amidst the chaos. As he confronted the looming challenges of the merger, his heart raced with the realization that he had set a course toward a profound reckoning. The call he'd been dreading beckoned. His father wanted a meeting to address the scandal directly. Marcus stood on the threshold of potential confrontation, his mind swirling with strategies and resolutions. The moment had come to face his father's expectations, to stand firm in his burgeoning convictions. Would he rise to the challenge, or would he crumble under the weight of legacy? The tension hung thick in the air, the moment charged with the promise of change, one way or another. As Marcus made his way down the echoing hall towards his father's study, the weight of impending confrontation pressed heavily on his shoulders. Each step seemed to reverberate through him, amplifying the conflicting emotions swirling in his mind. He had always respected his father's authority, but now the prospect of standing up to him felt dauntingly liberating. Pushing the door open, he was met with the familiar sight of polished mahogany furniture, ornate awards lining the walls, a monument to success, yet Marcus now viewed it through a different lens. This was not a sanctuary. It was a shrine to everything he disliked about his father's world. His father, Samuel Hawthorne, sat behind an imposing desk, a figure steeped in tradition, but too rigid for the changing tides Marcus now wished to embrace. "Marcus," Samuel said, lifting his gaze from a stack of reports. "Sit down. We have much to discuss." His tone bore the weight of authority, yet there was an underlying tension that hinted at the urgency of their situation. As he sat, a myriad of thoughts flooded his mind. How would he convey his newfound determination? How could he express his desire to redefine success, especially in the face of a scandal that had shattered their family's reputation? Pretense was no longer an option. If he was to do this, it had to be raw and real. Before he could second-guess himself, he leaned forward, interlocking his fingers in front of him. "Dad, I believe we need to address the company's ethical obligations, especially in light of the recent issues. Our reputation is at stake, and I think we can turn this narrative around." Samuel's brow furrowed, skepticism etched on his features. "You want to spin this into a lesson in ethics, while our competitors are eager to capitalize on our downfall? They're driven by profit margins, while we can inspire trust," Marcus stated, his voice stronger than he felt. "People are looking for genuine leadership. This scandal presents us an opportunity to change our approach, to prioritize connection and honesty over mere profit. Connection doesn't pay the bills, son. You must understand that." Samuel's voice rose, revealing the frustration simmering beneath his controlled exterior. "We're in the business of making money, not making friends." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. This was the moment he had prepared for, yet he was unprepared for the throbbing disappointment he felt at his father's response. He studied Samuel's hardened expression, recognizing the gap that had grown between their generations. "What if I told you that we could do both?" he urged, desperate for Samuel to see beyond the current crisis. "What if we established policies that protect not just our bottom line, but also our employees, our customers? Wouldn't that show real leadership?" Samuel's silence punctuated the air, the tension morphing into an unsettling stillness. Marcus could feel his heart hammering, a mix of fear and hope battling within him. This was more than a professional conversation. It was an indictment of everything he felt constricted under in their world. When Samuel finally responded, his voice matched the weight of his disappointment. "You need to understand, Marcus, this isn't just business. It's family legacy on the line. Your aspirations—" "They're not just aspirations," Marcus interrupted, his voice breaking slightly. "They're my values. I can't keep carrying the Hawthorne name forward without addressing the harm that's been done. Our legacy needs a shift if it is to survive." Samuel's sharp intake of breath echoed through the office. For the first time, his son's defiance seemed to take him aback. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, each man wrestling with their perspective on legacy and the future. Then, fleetingly, a flicker of realization crossed his father's eyes, a flash of recognition of the legacy they would leave behind, not dictated solely by wealth, but by their integrity. Was it possible that this confrontation could not just be the creation of a new narrative, but a pivotal moment for both of them? "I don't know what that looks like, Marcus," Samuel admitted, his tone shifting imperceptibly. Then let's figure it out together, Marcus suggested, a sense of urgency propelling his heart. We can redefine success, begin the process of healing. Just please, give me the chance. The room remained tense, a palpable weight of the unknown hanging in the air. Whatever came next would require a leap into the uncomfortable. Yet Marcus felt emboldened. But just as he began to hope for a breakthrough, the phone rang, cutting sharply through the charged atmosphere. Samuel picked it up, his expression shifting back to his business persona. Marcus braced himself, realizing that answering that call could steer their conversation into a familiar abyss, a departure from the vulnerability they had just begun to explore. "Marcus," Samuel said curtly, his focus shifting. "We'll table this for now." And with those words, the door closed on the possibility of change, even as a newfound determination crystallized within Marcus. He had taken a step, but the fight for his vision was just beginning, and he realized he might have to go beyond his father's walls to find it. His path lay ahead, uncertain, yet brightly lit by the conviction that change was necessary. How he would navigate the legacy of the Hawthorne name awaited, but one truth was already clear. He would not walk that path alone. Would he seek allies beyond his family to forge his new legacy? Or could he dismantle the very foundations of their empire from within? Marcus stepped into the brisk evening air, each breath a reminder of the conversation that had just transpired. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows against the towering facade of the Hawthorne corporate headquarters. Every willing step away from the confines of his father's study felt like a declaration of independence, but it was also a recognition of the storm that lay ahead. His thoughts raced as he navigated the parking lot, the weight of Samuel's words echoing in his mind. His father's indifference to ethical responsibility and personal values was an obstacle he had never been prepared to confront so directly. It was clear now that Samuel's vision of success was anchored in sheer profitability rather than principled leadership. But Marcus's vision soared higher and wider than the walls of the family empire. He knew he couldn't do this alone. The tension back in the study had unveiled something crucial. He needed allies who understood the nuance of values over mere profit. He thought about his friends, those he'd shared dreams of revolutionizing business practices with, friends who believed in leading by example. Yet, this wasn't just a casual conversation among friends. It was a necessity, a strategic measure to find the right allies to reshape the Hawthorne narrative. Pulling out his phone, Marcus scrolled through his contacts, stopping at the name of a former colleague, Jenna Hartley. She had always spoken passionately about her attempts to make their last joint project more ethically sound, despite enduring skepticism from higher-ups. He remembered her candid frustration and unwavering spirit. As he dialed, anxiety knotted his stomach. "Hey, it's Marcus," he said, his voice steadying as she greeted him. "Marcus, how are you? Long time no speak," she responded warmly. "We need to talk. It's about the Hawthorne name." The moment he uttered those words, he sensed a shift in their conversation. Marcus could hear the curiosity sparking in her voice. He proposed a meeting, outlining his concept for a new direction, one intertwined with ethics and leadership. Her enthusiasm was palpable, a sound as invigorating as the crisp evening breeze. "Absolutely," Jenna said. "I'd love to help. When can we meet?" "Tomorrow," he replied without hesitation. "I want to gather thoughts and ideas while the fire is still burning inside me." After their call, Marcus felt a weight lift. The sense of isolation that had threatened to engulf him diminished. Each newfound partnership fueled his determination to challenge the status quo, to breach the defenses erected by the Hawthorne legacy. Over the following days, every waking hour was spent researching ethical business models, drafting proposals, and envisioning a new era for Hawthorne Industries. The task at times felt monumental, but he thrived on the challenge, each setback merely sculpting his resilience. One afternoon, as he sat at his kitchen table, he tapped away at his laptop, immersing himself in innovation strategies that prioritized sustainability and integrity. This wasn't simply a plan to salvage the family business. It was an opportunity to redefine its entire purpose. Ideas flowed, yet shadows lingered just around the edges of his mind. Doubts about his father's response, the risk of pushing too far too fast. What if Samuel resisted? What if he undermined Marcus's efforts at every turn, branding him a traitor to the family? That fear was a knife at his ribs, but he knew he couldn't let it govern him. As he pushed through the trepidation, everything clicked into place. Formulating an official proposal to present both to Jenna and a few other trusted confidants ignited a feeling of clarity. He could create a movement, infuse new life into a company that had lost its way. Gathering their feedback would be essential to his strategy, yet it wasn't just about the ideas. It was about building a collective aspiration that could counteract the rigid foundations of his father's ideology. In the quiet moments that followed, he savored the reflection of purpose that began to illuminate the shadowy corners of his mind. But a looming question remained. Could he confront his father with this revolution still intact? With every moment that passed, the fear of the inevitable confrontation with Samuel grew more profound. Their legacies were at odds. When gears shifted, would he find the courage to turn the tides of the family business? The day was fast approaching where the Hawthorne legacy would either illustrate a bold new chapter or be forever shackled by its traditions. But one truth resonated in the silent chambers of his heart. He was no longer waiting for permission. As night fell, Marcus meticulously arranged his proposal documents, contemplating how to broach the impending resistance. Tomorrow would be pivotal. Just as he felt prepared, a startling realization struck him. What if Jenna's help wasn't enough? The moment of truth was near, paving the way for crucial decisions. Marcus knew that change often demanded sacrifice, but at what cost? Would he be ready to face the ghosts of his family's legacy? Morning arrived too soon. A single ray of sunlight slicing through the curtains and casting a spotlight on Marcus's cluttered kitchen table. The proposal he had spent days crafting lay before him, a manifestation of his hopes and fears, yet it felt simultaneously alive and fragile, a delicate balance on the verge of collapse. Jenna arrived promptly at 10 o'clock, her energetic presence stirring the stagnant air in the room. She greeted him with a vibrant smile, a refreshing contrast to the self-doubt gnawing at him. "I can't wait to see what you've prepared," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm brighter than the morning light. Marcus felt the familiar knot of apprehension tighten in his stomach as he gestured for her to sit. "I hope you're ready for an overhaul," he replied, forcing a grin despite the unease that lurked within. He initiated their discussion by outlining the vision he wanted to instill within Hawthorne Industries, one built on moral integrity and transparency. As he delved deeper into his reasoning, Jenna listened intently, her brow furrowing in concern. "You're asking for a seismic shift here," she said carefully, after he'd presented his main ideas. "The company has habits ingrained over decades. Your father isn't likely to jump on board." Her words, like a splash of cold water, sent tremors of doubt through him. "I know," Marcus replied, his voice faltering. "But what if we could at least get the conversation started?" Jenna leaned back, contemplating. "A conversation isn't enough when you're dealing with someone like Samuel. You'll need a strategy, Ian. Shareholders are looking for numbers, and you're suggesting they take a leap of faith." Her blunt realism felt like a challenge, but it also ignited a spark within him. "What if we framed it in a way that appeals to profit?" he countered. "Showing that ethical practices can lead to long-term success. We can highlight successful models from other companies." Jenna nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "Effective. Yet, you know your father isn't just about profit. He's about control. Are you willing to confront him? To stand your ground?" In that moment, Marcus realized that he wasn't just wrestling with his father's legacy. He was grappling with his own identity. The metamorphosis he was undergoing was more profound than he had anticipated. He wasn't simply looking to innovate. He was dismantling ingrained notions of familial loyalty and authority. Pushing through his fear, he let out a steady breath. "Yes, I need to confront him. This isn't just about Hawthorne. It's about who I am. If I can't do this, I'll never truly emerge from his shadow. With every exchange with Jenna, he felt a resolute clarity take form. Their dialogue became electric. Ideas ricocheted with vigor and intensity. They constructed potential proposals and frameworks, while anticipating rebuttals Samuel might throw at him. Jenna's perspective melded with his, creating a more nuanced strategy than he could have conceived alone. By the end of their meeting, Marcus felt an intensity coursing through him. The proposal had evolved into a robust plan, but it was more than just documents. It was a manifesto of his newfound identity. He could visualize presenting it with conviction, articulating his vision and demanding a place in the discussion, even if that meant risking estrangement from his family. As Jenna gathered her things to leave, a shadow passed over Marcus's face. "What if he dismisses me completely?" he asked, vulnerability creeping into his voice. "What if he refuses to even entertain the idea?" "Then you keep pushing. There's always a way back," she reassured him, her voice steady. "Remember, you were never just Dad's son. You're a force in your own right." With those words echoing in his mind, Marcus experienced an unexpected surge of determination. He wasn't merely a byproduct of his father's empire. He was an ambitious individual ready to carve his own path. But could he balance the risks involved with the pursuit of his vision? As he contemplated these stakes, a fresh wave of self-awareness washed over him. Each conversation, decision, and emotion was shaping him into someone new, and soon he'd stand at the crossroads, between tradition and transformation. The confrontation with Samuel simmered on the horizon like an approaching storm. Would he emerge stronger, or would he retreat into the shadows of his father's legacy? With resolve solidifying in his heart, Marcus understood one undeniable truth. The path ahead promised inevitable conflict, but he was ready to embrace it. As he prepared to face Samuel, the question echoed in his mind. Was he truly prepared to defy everything he had known? The moment of reckoning was upon him, and he could almost hear the tides shifting. With the sun gaining strength and the day warming, Marcus reflected on Jenna's words as he walked to his office. Each step felt weighty, the New York streets buzzing with life around him yet oddly distant, as if he were submerged in a bustling aquarium. He was an observer, an individual on the verge of a significant, self-imposed transformation. Every mindless conversation he had held before now took on new meaning. The greetings exchanged in corridors, the perfunctory small talk with employees, and even the polite nods to shareholders all felt superficial, a smokescreen behind which he had hidden for too long. Today, as he paced through the familiar hallways of Hawthorne Industries, he felt a charge of urgency. The looming confrontation with his father forced him to confront an awkward truth. He had become complacent, allowing himself to drift within the confines of expectation. Now it was time to navigate the trepidation that gripped him. He arrived at his office, a spacious sanctuary filled with glass, steel, and high-rise views, yet it suddenly seemed stifling, as if the walls were closing in. Taking a deep breath, he unrolled his refined proposal on his desk, the crisp sheets whispering promises of change. But as he began to read through his meticulously crafted arguments, doubts prowled through his mind. What if Samuel refused to even read it? What if he put it aside, dismissing it as an act of rebellious folly? Hunger gnawed at Marcus, a sense of ambition looking for nourishment. He flipped the pages, desperate to anchor his convictions in a sea of uncertainty. Numbers, projections, and case studies. That was the language Samuel spoke fluently. It would be vital to frame his proposal within that world, to translate his lofty ideals into hard metrics that even his father couldn't ignore. But as he strategized, he also felt an unsettling tug of resistance. A recognition that merely aligning with Samuel's expectations wouldn't satisfy him in the long run. Hadn't he just decided he was more than a mere puppet in his father's play? The thought of confronting Samuel sent shivers through him. Would raising his voice, advocating for moral integrity, cause a fracture in their already tenuous relationship? Marcus leaned back in his chair, letting the cool leather cradle his weight. In that moment of reflection, he uncovered a buried rage, a deep-seated resentment toward a legacy he had yet to claim for himself. He had long admired his father's brilliance, but simultaneously felt the weight of his machinations pressing down on him, weighing down his own dreams. With newfound urgency, he took to the whiteboard in his office, sketching ideas, drawing connections he had previously overlooked. It wasn't simply about profit. It was about establishing a foundation for sustainable growth that wouldn't compromise ethical standards. He charted avenues for corporate responsibility, environmental partnerships, and community engagements, the kind of blueprint he could build upon over time. As he prepared for the inevitable meeting with Samuel, he felt a mixture of excitement and fear. This was no longer a task. It was a turning point, an assertion of his identity against the backdrop of a legacy teetering between power and integrity. But a sense of purpose now pulsed within him. He pulled out his phone and texted Jenna, seeking her advice on how best to approach the situation. Preparing to confront my father. Need any last-minute tips? It felt liberating to reach out for support, a step indicating he was not walking this road alone. He awaited her response while envisioning how the confrontation would unfold in his mind. In the depths of this contemplation, he found himself questioning yet again. Would he be able to project his newfound conviction when the moment of confrontation arrived? The answer was clear, as he stared at the bustling city below, each person a thread in the vast fabric of ambition and struggle. He needed to face Samuel, to assert his vision. But would he embody the man he now aspired to become? Those shadows were still creeping at the edges, threatening to engulf him if he faltered. Enough hesitation, he considered. The time had come to defy everything he had known and craft his own future. Just then, Jenna's reply flashed across the screen. Go in prepared but expect resistance. Be steadfast. This is about more than business. It's your life. Marcus stowed his phone and found himself standing before the window, the city skyline stretching endlessly ahead. He inhaled deeply, ready more than ever to breach the chasm that separated him from his father and his true self. But as he prepared to take the next step, the question loomed larger than ever. Would he emerge from this confrontation unscathed, or was he risking everything for a chance at authenticity? One thing was certain. The moment of truth approached rapidly, and he could feel the ground shifting beneath him. Steeling himself, Marcus felt an unexpected surge of courage as the clock ticked closer to his confrontation with Samuel. He closed his eyes, momentarily separating himself from the chaos of bustling New York, allowing the weight of his purpose to crystallize. The echoes of Jenna's encouragement replayed in his mind, urging him to rise above the legacy that had shadowed him for too long. The digital clock on his desk flashed 10:57 a.m., reminding him that he had just 3 minutes before his scheduled meeting. Every second pulsed with opportunity and dread, as the specter of his father loomed large in his imagination. He picked up the proposal and smoothed the pages against the desk, inhaling the scent of fresh paper mingled with the faint whiff of coffee lingering from his morning cup. The facts and figures outlined in the proposal were his lifelines, tangible proof of his thoughts, aspirations, and the plea for a more ethical path for Hawthorne Industries. An urgency escalated within him, driving him to clarify his vision further before he stepped into Samuel's office. Yet, lurking below the surface, the unmistakable sting of uncertainty persisted. Had he truly transformed enough to face the man who had raised the stakes of success to insufferable heights? For a moment, he felt like a child again, a young boy tangled in the web of his father's expectations. But that boy had aspirations too, deep-seated dreams that hid under the veil of ambition. He found himself wondering, what if this meeting was less about his father's reign and more about unleashing his own potential? Just as he began to lose himself in spirals of thought, the door swung open. Samuel entered, characterized by a palpable intensity that filled the room, immediately commanding Marcus's attention. The sharp lines of his tailored suit contrasted starkly with the informal atmosphere of Marcus's vibrant office. "Marcus," Samuel began, his tone a blend of paternal warmth and executive authority. "What's the matter? You've been looking a little, how shall I say it, jittery lately?" "Just preparing," Marcus replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He slid the proposal across the desk, curiosity sparking in his father's eyes. "I want to discuss the future of Hawthorne Industries." A flicker of surprise crossed Samuel's face, quickly replaced by an unreadable expression. "Your ideas are ambitious, perhaps even idealistic. What makes you believe we can alter our trajectory at this juncture?" This was it. This was the moment that would define him. Drawing on every ounce of determination he possessed, Marcus leaned forward. "Because I believe we can lead while being responsible, Dad. The world doesn't just want profit. It demands purpose. Today, it's not only about shareholders, but about stakeholders, our employees, the communities we impact. This proposal embodies a strategic shift towards sustainable growth." As Marcus spoke, he witnessed his father's brows knit together, the wheels visibly turning in Samuel's mind. The transformation he envisioned depended on his ability to communicate effectively, firmly anchoring his convictions in terms that his father understood. "Metrics, projections, what you've outlined here, it sounds good on paper," Samuel said, but there was nothing but skepticism in his tone. "However, you must understand that change often comes at a cost. But we can't afford to ignore the cost of inaction either," Marcus shot back, propelled by a newfound assertiveness that ignited within him, a fierce, defiant spirit he had kept under wraps for too long. Samuel straightened, eyes narrowing. "That's bold, Marcus. But do not confuse hope with reality. Change is difficult and riddled with resistance. Your grandfather paved this path for a reason." "Maybe it's time to pave a new path," Marcus interjected, emboldened. The clarity within him boiled over, words tumbling forth. "If we uphold traditional methods at the expense of ethics, it might lead to quick gains but eventual collapse. We've already seen competitors rise and fall based on consumer conscience. Don't you see, this isn't just about business, it's about legacy. Our legacy." As the silence enveloped the room, Marcus felt his heart race. The intensity of the moment churned between them, a battlefield marked with unresolved conflicts and haunting expectations. His honesty hung heavy in the air, challenging Samuel to confront the very values he had instilled in his son. Just then, the phone on the desk buzzed, a stark reminder of the outside world. "This is a critical moment, Marcus," Samuel remarked, tapping his fingers on the desk. "Consider your next words carefully." In that instant, Marcus realized he was standing on the precipice of a significant transformation, not just of the company, but of themselves. Could they reshape their destinies? Would they emerge stronger, or would the clash shatter the fragile threads of their relationship? As the clock continued to tick, Marcus braced himself for Samuel's response, each heartbeat echoing the question in his mind. Were they ready to redefine everything? The tension was palpable, and he could feel the world shift beneath them, as they teetered on the verge of an uncharted future. The weight of Samuel's gaze bore heavily on Marcus, the silence stretching into an uncomfortable eternity. Every breath became a calculated risk, each heartbeat ringing in his ears. He sensed that the moment teetered precariously on a knife's edge, where the trajectory of his life hinged on a singular response. "Marcus," Samuel finally said, his voice low and steady, "change is indeed necessary, but it comes with risks. What you propose? It's radically different." The skepticism lingered, but for the first time, there was also a hint of curiosity. Marcus seized the moment. "Radical change is sometimes necessary to avoid stagnation, Dad. We need to be innovators, not just caretakers of legacy. I refuse to let past decisions dictate our future any longer." The words spilled forth, his conviction unshakable. The younger version of himself would have stammered and accepted Samuel's dominance. But today, he was resolute. Samuel's fingers tapped an uncertain rhythm on the desk. Risk mismanaged is merely reckless, and you still haven't convinced me that this shift won't lead us down a path of uncertainty. Uncertainty is part of growth. What's more certain, clinging to an outdated model or embracing change and evolving in step with the demands of our consumers. Each word felt like a stepping stone in a river, leading him away from the treacherous past. Samuel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, appraising his son with narrowed eyes. Marcus could see the battle within his father, a mix of paternal protectiveness and the relentless pressure of the legacy he carried. "And what will you do when the very stakeholders you wish to please disappoint you?" he challenged, testing the foundation of Marcus's vision. "Then we'll adapt. Flexibility is essential in today's economy." Marcus leaned in, letting a spark of defiance flicker in his gaze. "Look at how quickly consumer trends shift. They task companies to respond authentically, or they vote with their wallets. I want to lead with transparency, Dad." The atmosphere in the room shifted, as understanding hung in the air like a tightrope. Samuel was considering the implication of his son's steadfastness. For years, he had held the reins tightly, but Marcus was breaking free, a phenomenon that would be difficult to dismiss. "Let me be clear," Samuel warned, his voice firm. "The board won't accept mere idealism. They require proof of concept, potential for profit." "Then let's build the proof together," Marcus proposed, buoyed by an unexpected surge of optimism. "Let's demonstrate that ethical practices can yield thriving profits. We can partner with nonprofits, invest in community development, which would showcase our commitment to social responsibility." Samuel raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. Marcus felt as if he had crossed an invisible threshold, his voice gaining traction where it had once faltered. Each sentence fueled his own belief that he was meant to lead, to redefine the Hawthorne legacy, not inherit it passively. "What about your loyalty? The family business isn't just a company, it's an inheritance." Samuel's defensiveness crystallized. "I want to shape my own inheritance, Dad. It's time we all embrace a new legacy, one of ethical leadership." Staring at the reflection of the two men in the glass, Marcus felt transformed. The conversation, once a battlefield of conflicting ideals, began to take on the contours of collaboration. But Samuel's guarded response still lay ahead. "Your passion is admirable," Samuel murmured, a mix of pride and apprehension threading through his carefully crafted facade. "But for everything you envision, there will be obstacles, resistance. Are you prepared to confront those who resist?" "More than ever," Marcus declared, finding strength in his own conviction. "My path won't be paved without struggle, but struggle is a part of growth, isn't it?" An expectation crackled in the air, suspended as time stretched once more. Samuel looked contemplative, wrestling with the rivalry within. How far was he willing to let Marcus push? A moment of truth loomed on the horizon, and they both felt it. Just then, a sudden beeping drew their attention. A calendar reminder for Marcus. "I have to present to the board next week," he said, voice dropping low. "I need your support." In that moment, the stakes elevated. "Support is not given just because it's asked for," Samuel replied, an imposing weight to his words. "But understand this. If you step into that boardroom, I will not shield you. You must face them alone." Marcus's heart quickened. This simmering power dynamic between father and son teetered on a seismic shift. "Then I'll be ready," he responded, feeling emboldened by the precarious tension. This was not just about the company. It would become a test of himself, a new defining moment. Would he be recognized as a leader, or dismissed as just another idealist? The question loomed large as he prepared to step into the unknown, where every decision could either forge his independence or plunge him back into the shadows of legacy. As the clock ticked down towards the next pivotal meeting, Marcus sensed that he would face more than just board members. He was poised to confront the very essence of who he wanted to become. All eyes would be on him, and his response could forever alter their perception of both him and Hawthorne Industries. The moment of reckoning loomed closer, and he would have to summon every shred of his newfound courage. Would he seize control of his destiny, or become another chapter in his father's story? The clock on the wall ticked steadily, but to Marcus, time felt distorted, more like an enemy than a friend. The board meeting was imminent, looming over him like an oppressive cloud. He could already envision the cold conference room, the faces etched with skepticism, and the weight of expectations sinking his resolve. Yet, deep within him, there was a flicker of determination, a relentless urge to prove himself. In the days leading up to the meeting, Marcus immersed himself in research. He devoured articles, case studies, and interviews with industry leaders who had navigated similar transformations. Each page turned not just filled him with knowledge, but also unveiled hidden strengths he had overlooked in himself. The analytical skills he had honed for years at business school were waking up, igniting a sense of purpose within him. Amidst his quest for knowledge, he stumbled upon a concept that resonated deeply. Not only could ethical practices coexist with profitability, but in many cases, they thrived together. The stories he found of companies successfully merging social responsibility with profitability inspired him to create a vision for his presentation. He mentally crafted a narrative that intertwined innovation with moral integrity, hoping to paint a vivid picture for the board. But doubts crept in like uninvited guests. The specter of Samuel's warning loomed larger than ever. What if they resisted? What if they dismissed him as a naive idealist? He could already feel the weight of their collective gaze, scrutinizing and dismissing. Each sleepless night led to mental battles that challenged his resolve, but with each self-questioning moment, he discovered a new resolve. The day arrived. He stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie while scrutinizing his reflection. Gone was the boy who sought to appease his father. In his place stood a man ready to take ownership of his narrative. He envisioned the meeting, not as a combative arena, but as an opportunity to engage, educate, and inspire. Walking into the boardroom felt surreal, the polished table gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. The atmosphere pulsated with an undercurrent of skepticism. Marcus knew the stakes were high. He either conquered this moment or allowed it to define him as a failure. With each nameplate staring back at him, he noted the hesitations and guarded expressions. As he began his presentation, he could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. His voice, a steady rhythm, projected confidence while he articulated his vision of a new direction for Hawthorne Industries. He presented data showcasing companies that had thrived through ethical investments. That moment, he felt emboldened by the realization that he wasn't just selling an idea. He was forging a path. Yet, as quickly as the confidence surged, Marcus was met with critique. Idealistic, one board member called out. The market doesn't budge based on ideals, another added skeptically. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him, his heart racing with a mix of determination and anxiety. This was it. This was the moment he needed to confront the very resistance that Samuel warned him about. In that critical exchange, he responded with calm clarity. But what if I told you, he paused, gauging their reactions, that the very consumers you hope to attract are evolving. They demand authenticity. They want brands that stand for something. Our horizon can expand beyond profit margins. Each assertion he made strengthened his voice. Each rebuttal sharpened his resolve. The discussions that followed were rigorous, but within the clash of ideas, he found his rhythm. Every rebuttal he faced revealed another layer of his capability. He quickly adjusted his strategy, addressing their fears, countering skepticism with facts, and framing doubt as an opportunity for growth. The meeting drew to a close, yet Marcus felt an air of uncertainty linger. He knew he had fought valiantly, but had he secured their belief? He stood there, taking in the mixed expressions of discomfort and intrigue on the board members' faces. The moment crystallized. He had transformed from a boy seeking approval into a leader confronting reality. "Stay prepared," that inner voice cautioned him. "The legacy still stands between you and your vision." The tension hung palpable as the final remarks were shared, and in that uncertainty, he silently vowed to navigate what lay ahead. As the board members shuffled away, the weight of their deliberations pushed Marcus deeper into reflection. What would they decide? Would they embrace this vision or reinforce the chains of tradition? He braced himself for the reality that lay ahead, ready to tackle the next challenge that might solidify or shatter his aspirations. From the hushed whispers of the boardroom, one question resonated among the silence. Could Marcus truly change the course of his destiny, or was he merely caught in the web of familial legacy? The days following the board meeting were an emotional whirlwind for Marcus. He had awakened a dormant intensity within himself, fighting to reshape his reality, but the uncertainty persisted. The feedback from the board remained a murky gray, mixed with skepticism, but also hints of intrigue. Ever since the meeting, every glance at his phone had him poised for communication that could either validate his journey or cast him back into the shadows of his father's legacy. Then came the call he had waited for. It was Jenna, her voice effervescent at the other end. "Marcus, they want you back in," she said, excitement threading through her words. "You sparked a conversation that led to a follow-up meeting next week. They're open to discussing your proposal further." In that moment, a volcanic surge of adrenaline exploded within Marcus. He felt alive. This was an opportunity he could not let slip away. Yet as quickly as the rush came, doubt slithered back into his mind. What if this was merely a fleeting moment? The boardroom wasn't his only battleground. He recalled Samuel's sharp warnings about the intricacies of legacy versus ambition. He needed to prepare meticulously, reinforcing his defenses against any pushback that might arise. That night, Marcus immersed himself in preparation. Armed with research and data, he drafted an expanded presentation, incorporating feedback from his initial encounter with the board. He found himself drawing parallels between ethical business practices and their potential for increased profitability. It was no longer just about proving something. It was about carving a legacy indeed. As the follow-up meeting approached, Marcus felt his resolve crystallizing. He visualized this encounter differently, less as a confrontation and more as a genuine opportunity to engage his peers. The individuals seated around that long table were not just gatekeepers. They were potential allies in shaping a progressive vision for the company. But as the clock approached the meeting hour, the familiar anxiety began to claw its way back into his gut. What if they don't see the value? He wondered. What if they resort back to old ways? The moment arrived. Marcus walked into the room, echoes of his previous experience clawing at his confidence. Yet, as he observed the familiar faces, there was also a change. The tension in the air was tinged with an unmistakable hint of curiosity. "Glad to see you again, Marcus," one board member said, a lightness tugging at his lips. "You've managed to stir quite a discussion." Marcus began his presentation, channeling the energy swirling in his chest. Each slide illuminated his vision, crafting a narrative that linked ethical practices to tangible growth opportunities, awakening a sense of responsibility intertwined with profit. He watched the board members react. Their expressions shifted subtly, opening even as they probed him with hard questions. "What are the risks?" one would ask. "How can we ensure investor interest with such ideological shifts?" Each time Marcus felt the tension rise, he steadied himself. He had prepared for this. Every risk we take today is an investment in our future. It's the very essence of business. He highlighted real-world examples where companies succeeding ethically reported not just reputation boosts, but solid profit margins as well. Wouldn't you rather lead that change than follow it? Surprisingly, he found voices aligning, nodding along solemnly, reflecting his confidence. A realization struck him. This was his moment not just to persuade, but to inspire collective ambition. He weaved his narrative not only from profits, but also from the need for progressive identity, cementing the idea that vibrant leadership came from understanding market evolution. Some of the initial skepticism faded as discussions vibrated with newfound energy. It was no longer simply a debate, but a genuine exploration of where Hawthorne Industries could lead. Sustainability and innovation threading through every conversation. Weeks passed while waiting for the board's decision, and during that time, something remarkable happened. Samuel approached Marcus in his office. "I can see you've been talking to the board," he offered, trying to convey neutrality. "They're responding to your ideas. You've nearly convinced them." Despite the tension that still lingered like a ghost, a swell of pride filled Marcus. "We are shifting our narrative, Dad. This is just the beginning, but we have to keep pushing." Samuel's expression was difficult to read, but his voice softened. "You've changed the discourse within the company, Marcus. That takes courage. Just know that your ambitions are still tangled in our legacy. It won't be an easy path." "I'm ready for the difficulty," Marcus asserted, nodding firmly. "This is about more than just business. It's redefining who we are." And truly, it was. Marcus began attending conferences and networking events, advocating ethical business practices, and reshaping what it meant to lead in the tech industry. Weeks turned into months, and with every presentation and conversation, he felt the early shadows of expectation fade into the background. As the board formally approved the proposal for ethical transformation, complete with sustainability initiatives, Marcus truly felt weight lift. He was not just the heir to a legacy. He had surged beyond mere inheritance. He had made a mark of his own, instilling values that would pave the way not only for the company he represented, but also for the type of leader he aspired to become. He had arrived at a significant threshold, a moment of authenticity that promised to bridge the past with a proudly determined future. He was defined not merely by his family name, but by his convictions born from those transformative moments with Clara, and through the empowering push of self-discovery. His heart remained full as he navigated feedback from those closest to him, building a legacy that truly embodied connection rather than disconnection. This was a victory that spoke not just to the numbers, but to the ideals that could uplift and transform. For the first time, he stood firmly in his identity, respected, recognized, and resolute. A leader who had broken the branding of a legacy, molded by singular narratives to become a renewed symbol of ethical ambition. With a satisfying resolve coursing through him, Marcus took a deep breath and stepped fully into the light of integrity and progress. This was not merely a victory for himself, but an entire revitalization for the name Hawthorne. The future was his to shape, and he would not let it escape again. If you found inspiration in Marcus's transformation, you need to subscribe now to our channel. This is the moment to show your support for real stories of overcoming and change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and let us reach more aspiring individuals like Marcus. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible journey. And of course, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the vital importance of supporting and amplifying these messages.